Suzuki, always known for their dependable and reliable SUVs, have entered a more expensive sector of the mid-sized crossover market with this larger and slightly more aspirational Across model. If it looks more than a little familiar to you, then that's because it's almost entirely based on a Toyota RAV4, the plug-in version to be specific. But can the Across make its own distinct mark? It's certainly one of the market's most efficient PHEVs.
This Across model is based on the plug-in hybrid RAV4 rather than the more usual self-charging hybrid version. Both types of powertrain use a 4-cylinder, 2.5-litre petrol engine mated to an eCVT belt-driven auto gearbox. But with the plug-in setup, the output of both the combustion unit and the front electric motor it's mated to are both boosted to around 180 bhp. That's to compensate for the extra weight of the necessarily much larger 18.1 kilowatt-hour battery this PHEV model needs for its impressively long and achievable 46-mile all-electric driving range. All-wheel drive is mandatory with this borrowed powertrain, so there's a second electric motor driving the rear axle and producing a further 54 bhp. Add this output to that being generated up front, and the surprisingly potent 302 bhp total makes this Across easily the most powerful car Suzuki's ever sold. You'll need to select the sport setting from the 3-mode driving dial down here by the gear stick to really get a feel for that. Your other drive options are Eco and Normal. The alternative HV mode is more realistic for normal driving, as it runs this Suzuki as a regular full hybrid, the software seamlessly blending in either petrol or electric power sources as required. A full press on the same button connects you to a further charge mode, which sees the engine note rise as it, rather inefficiently, charges the battery when you're driving. But you don't have to make any of these driving mode choices unless you really want to, because an additional auto EV or HV mode button is also provided, which essentially makes all the decisions for you. Its choices seem effective too, because the advertised 46-mile electric driving range figure turns out to be not beyond the bounds of achievability. The WLTP rated efficiency stats are difficult to better in this class. 282.4 mpg on the combined cycle and 22 grams per kilometre of CO2, which means a super low 6% benefit-in-kind taxation rating. The only downside is that the onboard charger can only take up to 3.3 kilowatts, so charging takes a surprisingly long time by class standards, up to 5.5 hours. So, here we are with the grandest, most expensive car that Suzuki has ever offered. And it certainly feels surprising to come across the company's badge on the bonnet here, partly because this model is so much larger and pricier than anything else the marque sells, and partly because so much of the bodywork is exactly the same as that of a Toyota RAV4. The visual changes that have been made to set the Across apart from its development stablemate are mostly found here at the front, which has much less of a sharky, angular look. The distinct upper and lower grilles of a RAV4 are replaced by this one large central appendage, which sits above a more prominent lower silvered skid plate panel. The corner cutouts for the fog lamps are wider and more prominent, while the bespoke bi-beam projector headlamps with their LED daytime running lights are slimmer. OK, let's take a look inside. Getting in is made easier by this relatively low driver's hip point. At the wheel, it's as smartly finished as the asking price would lead you to expect, but basically unchanged over a RAV4. The only difference is the badge on the steering wheel, through which you view a combination of digital and analogue design. The binnacles provided 7-inch central display isn't large enough to show anything other than a speedometer, but it does have a useful centre section that can show various drive readouts. As for the analogue gauges that flank this display, well, there are fuel and temperature needles on the right and a hybrid system indicator on the left. Everything else is covered off by this 9-inch centre dash infotainment touchscreen, which covers off the usual DAB audio, Bluetooth and Apple CarPlay or Android Auto connectivity options. But rather appallingly given the asking figure here, lacks navigation. We do though like the neat energy monitor which shows you at any given time what's being charged or powered by what. You also get comfortable seats, good all-round visibility and plenty of cabin storage. Right, let's take a look at the rear. And once inside, well, we're a little disappointed to find that this bench doesn't slide, but the backrest reclines for greater comfort on longer journeys, and despite the low-ish roofline, headroom's good too, thanks to a metre between the seat base and the roof. And that's thanks to Suzuki's relatively lengthy 2,690mm of wheelbase length. There's also plenty of room for legs and knees. It measures at 720mm with the driver's seat set typically to give the person up front a metre of legroom. There's a little more cabin width than you might expect too, so less chance of a couple of adults digging each other in the ribs. Now, you'll be standing clutching your packages for rather a long time as the electrically operated hatch completes its arthritic perambulation upwards to eventually reveal a 490-litre capacity, which is actually very good by mid-sized PHEV crossover class standards. And when the rear seat is folded, well, there's no fold-flat front passenger seat option to allow for the carriage of really long items, so you'll need to be satisfied with a very unremarkable 1,168 litres of total capacity up to the level of a tonneau cover. The area provided here isn't quite flat, but the designers claim that this car can accommodate a 29-inch mountain bike without any wheels having to be removed. In summary, the Across is quick, well-built and easy to live with. Plus, it goes further on its battery than nearly all its class rivals. All attributes that might endear you to this car and make you feel able to justify its price tag. We just wish Suzuki's rather individual approach to style and engineering also lay among these attributes. As it is, just about everything that's good about this car is really down to Toyota. Does that matter? Well, if you decide you'd like an Across, then you probably won't think so.